Today, to be successful, you know it's important that you have a giving spirit, that you're able to reach out. Matter of fact, a really good book you might have read is The Go-Giver, a bestseller that's been out for a long time by Bob Burg and John David Mann. And then they followed it up with one that just built right on top of that success. The Go-Givers Sell More, a fabulous book. And now, are you ready for this? Another one's out called The Go-Giver Leader. This is the newest book. It is fabulous. I have read this twice. Went through, and you can see I made a lot of notes here, and it's good that I did, because joining us to give us some of those ideas and principles of what it means is the co-author of that, my buddy Bob Burg. Bob is joining us today from his office in South Florida. Bob, thanks for being here today.
My pleasure, Terry. Great to be with you always.
You did a fabulous job on this, my friend. You and John David Mann putting it together gave a lot of ideas with a wonderful story, a moving story that, seriously, at the end of the book, I was crying. I was thinking, this is fabulous, a wonderful message that's inspiring in this, and all the way through it, you loaded it with chunks of valuable tidbits of information, wisdom that we can go, wow, that's really good. And the way you did it within the setting. So if it's all right with you, Bob, what I'd like to do is go through this. I've got some notes here and some places I want to refer to, and just have you comment on it. Would that be all right?
I would love to. Thank you.
Excellent. Now, before we do that, tell us just kind of a nutshell capsule of what Go-Giver Leader is about and how it is similar to and also differs with other books that you put together in that series.
Yeah, well, and you know, John David Mann, because you know John, you're friends with him, and he's a great writer. He's the storyteller, right? He's fantastic, and he was a great entrepreneur and leader. So again, it was a fun collaboration, as it always is with John. And this book is also a parable, just like The Go-Giver. It's set in the same fictional town, and while we don't have the same basic characters, there are a couple of times when we say the reader will bump into certain character remembrances and different places and things that will remind them of the Go-Giver. So it's sort of fun for the people who've read the Go-Giver, but it's a self-sustaining book. You don't have to have read the first one. This one's about a guy named Ben. He's a very hard-charging guy. He takes leadership, he takes control, and knows what he needs to do to get there. Or does he? And he meets a woman, an elderly woman by the name of Aunt Elle, who reminds him more of a librarian than anything else. In fact, he's pretty convinced that's what she is until partway through the story. And he ends up getting some advice from her that, just like Joe in The Go-Giver, has him totally shifting his focus. And if you recall, in The Go-Giver, it was about shifting your focus from getting to giving. Giving in this context meaning constantly and consistently providing value to others. Well, here, Ben learns that the shift in focus goes from sort of taking leadership to giving leadership, which at first he's not really sure exactly what that means, but he finds out.
Yeah, he does it very well. And the principles to that, I think, are so important. Those of us that are in the real world, in business and trying to get by, can learn those. As a matter of fact, I'm just going to go into it here, going over to page 13. You talk about a story where Aunt Elle is talking with Ben, and she said something to him that was profound. I'd like you to expand on this a little more, where she said, the less you say, the more influence you'll have. Tell us about that phrase and how that relates to influence.
Well, you know, in a certain way that means, and let's define influence as really being the ability to move a person or persons to a desired action, usually within the sense of a specific type of idea or goal. Now, that's the maybe definition, but I don't think it's really its essence. The essence of influence is pull as opposed to push. You never hear people say, wow, that Gina, she is so influential. She has a lot of push with people. She sure is pushy. Wow. She just pushes her will on others and people just respond to that. No.
That's a negative, actually. Right. They say you're pushy. You know, the pushy salesman is one we hear about.
Right. They'd say Gina has a lot of pull, because that's what influence is. It's an attraction. Great influencers, great leaders pull people. They attract people to their ideas. And there's two ways to be able to lead. From the position of leadership, the boss, you'll do it my way or it's the highway. It's through compliance. right? It's through force, it's through intimidation sometimes, or there's through attaining buy-in, which is really the type of leadership that we respect. It's earning people's commitment. Now, how is it best to earn someone's commitment? Now, by the way, you can lead through compliance. I mean, let's face it, the employee knows if he or she wants any chance of advancement or promotion or raise, or to not get disciplined or punished or fired, they need to do what they're told. But that's compliance. And very rarely does that work out. I mean, at best, when you try to lead through compliance, people may do what they're told, but they'll do absolutely nothing more than what they're told. And sometimes they'll find a way to sabotage the process completely.
Yeah, reminds me of the old Soviet Union, where they would joke that, they pretend to work and the government pretends to pay them. Ultimately, you're not going to get what you want when you use that force and coercion model.
Well, look at when Mao took over China and they made people plant and harvest. I don't know if plant is the right word, but with the rice, but they made them sell them at way below market prices because it was fair that way. Well, what people did is they didn't work as hard and they started actually growing their own rice, cultivating their own rice on the side.
How about that?
Huh?
How about that?
How about that, right? So when we talk about leading through influence, saying less, really what we're saying is, how do you lead most effectively? How do you earn that kind of commitment? Well, I think Dale Carnegie really had it right when in his classic, How to Win Friends and Influence People, where he wrote, ultimately, people do things for their reasons, not our reasons. So the great leader, Terry, the go-giver leader, will ask themselves questions such as, how does what I'm asking this person to do align with their goals, their wants, their needs, their values? And when we ask ourselves these questions, rather than telling people what they should want to do, now we come a lot closer to that buy-in, to that earning that commitment. And one of my great friends and mentors, Dondi Scumaci, who I believe you know, she says, when it comes to leadership, when it comes to influence, compliance will never take you where commitment can go.
I like that. That makes a lot of sense. Well, that ties in also what you say over here on page 53. I'm looking at where you have Aunt Elle, that wonderful sage of wisdom, telling us if more people responded instead of reacting, the world would be, and then it's a ... and we know that's better. And he said, the more you yield, the more power you have. Now, that sounds a little bit strange and different. Tell us on that. Please expand on that a little bit more. The more you yield, the more power you have.
Yeah, because as Ben said, doesn't that sound like you're being a coward or something? Doesn't it sound like you're letting people walk over you? And no, not at all. What we mean is this. Let's say you're going to enter a highway, okay, and you're on the the entryway to get on that highway. Cars are speeding by. Now, if you want, you can be really brave about it and just speed on from the ramp onto the highway. Now, you'll probably cause an accident or you'll get in an accident yourself, but you could do that if you chose. Or you can yield. You can kind of look to see what's going on. You can look to see who is where, what are they doing, and then pick your spot.
Very important. Pick your spot, kind of be situationally aware of what's going on, and then maneuver in a polite way, in an appropriate way, a situation appropriate way to get in there. Is that right?
I love how you just said it. Yeah, that's perfect.
Yeah, I think that would be important. Well, speaking of that kind of thing, you said something here. I mean, the book is just packed with information. Those of you watching this is important. It's set, again, within a wonderful story that is very touching and really good. I love the characters in here, but even more than that, it's got gems in there that you go, oh my goodness, that will relate. And here's one, Bob, I love this one here. You talked about it, calling it the Lincoln's Maneuver after the President Abraham Lincoln. Right. And we talked about boxing and a feature called pairing. I'm going to have you explain that to us. But I love the way you said this, that Aunt Elle demonstrated as she spoke, jutting her left hand out straight, the target will wait until the punch almost hits him and then deflect it away with the slightest flick of the right wrist. I thought this one would be good, given that we're using video right now, not just audio. Bob, you could show us a little bit of what you mean by that.
Well, I know you were a martial artist, Terry, and so
Yes.
so you know these things much better than I do. But what it is basically is this person in the restaurant kind of was about to verbally, if not physically, attack Ben, who bumped into him, and Aunt Elle kind of came by, and what she did is she took the pressure off everybody by using tact. And as my dad always said, tact is the language of strength.
Mm.
Tact is a way of, if you have to correct someone or critique someone, or dare I be politically correct and say constructively criticize someone, not that we ever want to do that, but there are times in the real world we need to. What tact does is it allows us to get our point across in a way that not only is the person not defensive about it and resistant to our idea, but they're actually open to us and more open to a possible idea. So what Lincoln did when he was told by a reporter that some another member of of his team, and we know with Lincoln that his team was really literally a team of rivals, as Doris Kearns Goodwin would say, title of her book. And so somebody had said something about Lincoln that was very uncomplimentary, and the reporter tried to get Lincoln into a controversy by saying, "Oh no, as might probably happen today." But what Lincoln did is he said, well, I have a lot of respect for that man. And if he thinks it's an issue, it must be, or it's something I need to consider. Right. And so what he did is he took the totally diffused the situation. He took the air out of the punch. And what Antel was explaining was in a boxing match that what happens is when the person throws the punch, let's say a left jab, that you wait till it just about hits you, and then a little flick of the wrist actually sends the punch in another direction. And the neat thing is, the paradoxical thing is, the harder the punch is thrown, the less of a flick of the wrist it needs. So you're not going like this, trying to force it away. No, you're just letting it go in that direction. And I know, you participated in judo, as I recall.
Yes, that's correct. Judo, which is defined as the gentle way of
Right.
overcoming a point. Instead of meeting that force with force, you take that force that they have, combine yours with it
Right.
in a gentle way to overcome, and much like
Right.
Aikido.
Yeah, you use their force to your advantage, and actually to the advantage of everyone in this case.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that you're showing it in a wonderful, beautiful way that's very practical. And I think that's what works today. Too much of our world today, I know many can resonate with this. There's confrontation, there's fighting, and people arguing. We see that in the political realm, particularly. And it actually gets, I think the word would be ugly in
Yeah.
many ways. And it would be much nicer to be able to understand and use these principles that are in the Go Giver Leader. We do that. Well, here's another one that I really liked when you said something about this over on page 97. Leadership is not something you can put on and take off like a set of clothes. Your capacity to influence is not something you can rehearse like a speech in a play. People, contrary to popular belief, are not fools. No matter what front you put on, they will read you consciously or unconsciously, the you behind the words. That is definitely a wow. Tell us a little bit more about that, Bob.
No, thank you. I think really a go-giver leader, if you will, or any great leader understands that great leadership is never about the leader. It's rather about everyone whose lives you have the opportunity to touch. And it's not something you can turn on and just take off. That's why instead of just saying giving leadership, the last law is practice giving leadership.
Very
Giving
good.
leadership is both a noun and a verb. Giving leadership, a way of being a leader. Practicing it, meaning you're always doing it, always getting better. I think of Captain David Marquet, who has a wonderful book. If you've never read this, it's a fantastic book. It's called Turn the Ship Around. And he was, back in the 90s, the captain of the USS Santa Fe, the worst performing submarine in the U.S. Navy.
Hmm.
And within a couple of years, he turned it into the best performing submarine in the U.S. Navy. He did this by giving leadership. He equipped people, if you will, to have responsibility for what they were doing. He came in what was a very top down, command and control. This is the way it is. And it's not that he was a softy or anything, but he respected the people in his command. He let them know, he communicated to them that he believed in them, he felt they were responsible and that they could have responsibility. And what happened is, he believed in them. And as he believed in them, they began to believe in themselves. And he gave leadership. And when he gave leadership, they assumed leadership. And here's the interesting thing. Many of those who were in his direct line of command, if you will, they ended up being captains of their own ships, because a go-giver leader, like any great leader, their end goal is to develop other leaders, to help them be their very best, and to eventually be able to lead. And many of
Yes.
the other people, they climbed the ranks to the position they wanted to go, but they felt great about themselves. It was a fantastic team, and that's from practicing giving leadership.
Practicing at giving leadership, and it's something that you demonstrate in the story, in the book, and also do it. One of the things I want to conclude, those of you that are watching this is a book you want to get, and you wouldn't just read it once. It's great for that. You'll want to continue to use it because it's designed here. I'm going to give kind of the secret sauce here, Bob. On page 143, you've got Ben's manifesto there, where you give the keys to legendary leadership. You talk about that, and then look at this, folks. On the next page, here are these wonderful summations of the important points. Now, you think about this. If you're in a leadership capacity right now, you could use this to conduct your regular monthly meetings or weekly meetings. When you want something, this is a great one to have so that you could then have your entire staff get a copy of the book. They read it, they understand it, and then you can go back and say, we're going to talk today about the leadership of tact is the language of strength. I'm reading right here from the book. And you don't react, you respond. Wonderful little gems like that. And then you could go around the office asking people how they've seen that work and their thoughts on it and how they can implement that this week. So it's not just a good book to read. Oh, it is that. But this is a book that can change the way that you live your personal and your business life and have much greater results, in my opinion. Bob, you've done a marvelous job with this. You and John David Mann have done great. Before I let you go, though, we want to find out anything else that you might add that we've kind of left out here that you feel is important. And also, I'm going to reach through, kind of twist your arm a little bit. How can they get a copy of this book? Where can they go? What do they need to do? And how do they get in touch with you?
Well, probably the best thing is just to go to thegogiver.com. And without the hyphen, just thegogiver.com.
Yeah, spell that out for us for those that are hearing this on audio, because we make sure that they get it, and they might not have English as their first language. So
Sure.
Please, if you don't mind, slowly spell that out.
Sure. thegogiver.com. And they can scroll down to the book itself, and when they click on it, they can read an excerpt or a sample chapter if they'd like to see if they like where it's going first, and they can always click right through.
Excellent. And any final words of wisdom or insight that you have?
No, you cover things so well, Terry. You're such a great interviewer. Thank you so much. And, I think you really said it all. Thank you so much again for having me as a guest on your show. And I always love having you as a guest on my podcast. And it's just always a pleasure.
Yes, indeed. Well, I respect you and appreciate you. And those of you that are watching this, seriously, you hear a lot of books that are available. There's a lot of tools out there that you can get. This is one that can really help you in a practical way in your business. If you're in the position of leadership, knowing about the go-giver leader, the story is one that sticks with you because it's a fun story and it's an emotional story where you'll be going up and down, and then you end up, I hope I'm not spoiling, but say it ends on a really good note. You're going to smile and you're going to love it.
Good people win.
Yeah, that's right. That's a good one. So I hope I didn't spill too many of the beans there, but you really want that. And then go through and look at the gems that are there. I recommend go through and read it, and then go back and read it again, highlighting those gems that are there. You'll be better off for it. I would look forward to hearing from you. I'm Terry Brock at terrybrock.com. You can drop me a note. All the contact information is over there on the website, and Bob is available. You can find the book in many different places, and of course at bobburg.com you can find out all the information. He has great comments and a great speaker as well. So if you need to find out about this at your meeting, Bob would be a good person to call and find out if that's a good fit for you in your meeting. Thank you very much for joining us. I'm Terry Brock, and we will look forward to hearing from you.